a secret they keep, but I see through her lies, I see the truth. Gonna make her pay for what she do. Fanny's got a reputation to uphold, but her tactics are shady. Story untold, she thinks she's clever, but I'm on to her game. I'll expose her ways and put her to shame.
Hey, folks, it is Tuesday, and yeah, it's Tuesday, day 131 in the young Thug RICO trial. Sidebar counter is at 247, and yeah, let's see for ourselves what went on the 40-odd minutes since, well, the trial started a bit. Well, it's not that I'm late, but it's that I can't go live sooner because I have a day job. It is currently 3:30 p.m. where I am, and yeah. I have no idea what was going on this morning, but people on X told me. So let's see if they are correct. And yeah, I mean, let's just get on with it. See if Prosecutor Love got all her papers in order that she was supposed to hand over last week, then yesterday morning, and then this morning. Juror and witness running late. Okay. Okay. Welcome to the young Thug RICO trial. Rose DeLuca, thank you. Hasn't started anyway. Well, we do know there was a bit of talking. But let's see here what it was. Let's see here. Dun, dun, dun.
There's one. Around the corner. Oh, hey, see, I cannot see that far around the corner, so. All right. So I am in receipt, which I'm sure everybody else is, of the state's kind of amendments to some of the witnesses. So does that mean that you will not be calling Ms. B that we discussed yesterday?
Miss B,
Yes.
not this week. Miss Hilton was scheduled to speak with her tomorrow. So I want that opportunity. I want her to do that before.
All right, so to be determined, but she knows it won't be this week.
Right.
Okay.
We're not trying to put her up this
All
week. And also, as far as the first person that we had, that person has said that to apprise the court that they are in traffic. I told them they were going to be here. They were supposed to be here at a certain time. They had a problem with their back yesterday. I talked to them early this morning, and they said that it was giving them a little bit of trouble, but I talked to them.
They had back problems, both of them, and now they are it at this point in time. This sounds like bad excuses because the prosecution doesn't have their witnesses lined up properly.
About 10 minutes ago. Actually, I talked to them before 8, at about 8:15. And that's when they also said that they were having a little trouble with their back, but they were on their way. They should be here by 8:45. I talked to them a few minutes ago. They said that they were still in traffic. The traffic was heavy and that they anticipated 9:15.
I've been to this courthouse. Now, of course, there is traffic. There is always traffic in Atlanta. That's why you start in time, so you arrive in time. And if these two are police officers, oh, she's talking about Thorp. Squirrel Brain, Detective Squirrel Brain. Yeah, okay, then I understand why he doesn't have the mindset of, oh, maybe I should start earlier. Yeah, Samantha Yo says, Thorpe has back issues from carrying around all the BS. High daily quick bites. I mean, yeah, be more creative. Both have back issues and both and both are late. Yeah, sure.
Or that's what they said. And they called while I was on the elevator with Mr. Harvey. And I was trying to just get in here.
Okay.
So
All right, well, I think one of the jurors is running a little bit late today
Oh,
as well. So although he or she, I don't even know if it's a he or she, might be able to get here by 9, but we'll just see. So can I ask why? I mean, you gave us a list of several crime scene investigators and techs and officers that you have added back in based on, you said, I guess,
well,
evidentiary objections that have been made recently.
now.
Yeah.
So, for instance, one of the ways that the state pared down its witness list was to, we did not anticipate that there would be an objection to such a thing as, we know that this was this person's apartment. The responding officer saying this was this person's apartment. Yesterday, we garnered a hearsay objection to that information.
Oh, well, if you are trying to get in certain pieces of evidence, then you need that specific witness. This is nothing new. This is not on the defense for you turning up with crap witnesses. Here's an idea. Remove the crap. I mean, you could remove half of the charges and the overt acts and still have, I know, 100 overt acts.
Many of the witnesses that we had taken out are, for instance, people who've collected shell casings from scenes.
Okay.
A few weeks back, I believe that there was
Do you really need the people, all the people who collected shell casings?
an objection, or there was a concern voiced that we will object to the NIBIN results if there's not a chain of custody shown. We had more than 28 shootings.
Chain of custody. This is nothing new, Ms. Love. Absolutely nothing new. Chain of custody.
That had shell casings collected on scene.
Okay.
If there's that objection, we have to have people to talk to.
Okay, so that's based on chain of custody. I was trying to figure out why the crime scene techs would be now needed based on yesterday's objections, but it's not yesterday's, it's the chain of custody objections.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right.
And I believe that the question was posed whether there were people that we weren't intending to call, and I wanted to include those people that we were adding back in.
Okay. And then the the second set is to establish who lives certain places.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Well, is there any defense movement on either of those issues, either chain of custody if every crime scene tech does not testify, or who lives where? If not, I guess we've got 28 additional witnesses. Okay, we have 28 additional witnesses.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
This love,
Referred to someone as them,
Someone's what?
as them. I know that we have a AS that we haven't been using. That person's name, is that who we're talking about? With the back issue? Or
Mm-mm. That's, who is it, Miss Love?
It was
Thorp?
Yes, that's what we announced yesterday.
Remember yesterday at the,
Okay, so that's who they're planning on calling first?
I guess.
And regarding the witness who is the other one,
AS, yes. What, do we know anything new about? Is that who you meant?
no. the
Okay,
one that's
a
in
different
hospital,
other one.
Different other one.
Okay,
The one with the medical issues.
okay.
I believe Mr. Shide is here. We're trying to discern what their current status is. I don't know that, and I have had no opportunity to speak to his doctors.
Oh, now you're concerned with his health? You damn well wasn't concerned with his health on Friday when you had him put in jail. And now, oh, this is
That I believe is very important based on just the conversation that I've had with,
Sure. I doubt if his doctors are going to tell you anything without a court order.
that's what that's what we believe too, so.
Mr. Shive, however, could tell you if he wanted to, or if his client is okay with that.
Well,
There was,
situation is, DA called me last night when I was 50 miles from here, but what I'd like to do is I have a preliminary hearing, deal with that, go to the hospital. You can have an investigator or somebody else be right there when the doctor's there, and with my client's okay, they can get whatever information they want.
that is exactly.
That would
be
work, I
perfect.
believe.
And yep, that would be perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Shive, will you alert somebody from the state team once you're finished with your preliminary hearing?
As
Okay.
soon as I finish, we'll come down.
Oh, okay,
Let
great.
an investigator wants to go with me.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
All right, so the crime scene investigators and officers that you're needing to add back in for a chain of custody, can you try to just limit their testimony
Oh, it will be.
purely to chain of custody, 5 minutes, they're done?
That is exactly what we
Wonderful.
intended to do. Yes, we did.
All right.
I don't believe you, Miss Love.
And, that's it.
And what? And what?
All right, and I received the brief from Ms. Abassi and from you, Ms. Love, on the overt, I think, I can't remember, I haven't looked at it yet, but a brief from each of you, which I'll look at. All right, the juror that was running late is not here yet, but close, so.
And Your Honor, if the court will
Yes.
permit me to step out just to inquire about my witness and his ETA as well. And I would also,
Oh, and you had asked if Mr. Zachary can be called out of turn or in the middle of testimony, and that's fine. I
Thank
mean,
you.
however it needs to work.
thank you.
Okay.
This microphone, though it's showing red that we're supposed to be off, I believe that it is amplifying and broadcasting, I don't think that we would be able to have a conversation that's not broadcast. I don't know why it's, though it's off as red, it's live.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
If you turn it to green, does it turn off?
No, I turned it to green.
So a new set of sound issues. Great.
Can we, is it possible to have IT come and,
Well,
oh,
Ms. Pursfield's reaching out to them now.
thank you. May I step outside?
Yeah, you may. Is there any other matter from the defense that we need to take up before, obviously, the juror gets here? We have to wait for the juror to get here, but anything in the meantime?
Not on behalf of Mr. Williams.
Okay, anybody else? Nope. Okay. We'll
What about
Just
the documents that Miss Love was supposed to have for you this morning? Forget about those?
recess in place until we have the witness and the jury.
Okay.
Sure.
Dun, dun, dun. And they have been in recess ever since. Okay. Oh. Oh. Camera movement. No judge. Ah, there she is. Good timing. I need to go visit the big boys' room. You all entertain yourselves.
All right, State, you may call your next witness.
State calls Detective Jim Thorp.
All right.
Raise your right hand. You swear affirm testimony you give the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I swear.
Absolutely. State and spell your first and last name loudly to the mic for the court.
Yes, sir. Detective J. Thorpe Jr., Thorpe. Jim.
Good morning, Detective Thorpe.
Good morning, ma'am.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. Detective Thorpe, would you please introduce yourself to the jury by telling them where it is you currently work?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Jim Thorpe Jr., City of Atlanta.
Hang on just a second. You're gonna have to use the mic, Miss Love. Can you hear the witness? All right.
All right, if everyone can hear me and can stand the static, I'm gonna use this
Thank
one.
you.
Thank you. Would you, go ahead, I apologize. Tell the jury where it is that you currently work.
Yes, ma'am. I currently work City of Atlanta Police Department Homicide Unit.
How long have you worked at the City of Atlanta Police Department in the homicide unit?
I work with the City of Atlanta now for 30 years and 9 months.
All right. Have you worked as a homicide detective the entire time?
Yes, ma'am, 20 years.
Now, 30 years and 9 months and 20 years are different. So what did you do when you first started working with the Atlanta Police Department?
My first assignment,
Can I hear you if you don't use the mic? And I'm sorry that it's staticky. Maybe one day we could get that fixed also, but we're just gonna have to endure the static.
Yes, Your Honor. Try to minimize it. What did you do when you first started working with the Atlanta Police Department?
yes, ma'am. The first assignment was the Atlanta Police Zone 3 Precinct Evening Watch Mobile Patrol.
That would have been in what year that you started that?
I started mobile patrol in 95.
What types of activities did you conduct as a Zone 3 Evening Watch Mobile Patrol Officer?
Answering 911 calls, dealing with all types of calls of accidents, suspicious persons, shootings, robberies, burglaries, car thefts.
Okay. There we go.
Yes, ma'am.
And tell the jury what parts of Zone 3 you patrolled as a patrolman in Zone 3 Evening Watch.
Then the beat I was assigned was called 304, and that beat was mostly around Metropolitan Parkway, Sylvan Road, leading up to Cleveland Avenue and Lakewood Avenue.
How much of Cleveland Avenue did you patrol?
It would depend on if we were short an officer, they would reposition my team. It was 2 officers assigned to the beat 304. So either one of us could get pulled, and usually around Cleveland Avenue, that was the 308 beat. And we pretty much control all of Cleveland, 75, 85, north and south, Jonesboro Road, and all the streets surrounding Old Hayville and streets like that.
Okay. As a homicide detective, are you restricted to one zone only, or do you work the entire city of Atlanta?
We work the entire city of Atlanta.
Are you familiar with the neighborhood surrounding Cleveland Avenue and including Cleveland Avenue today?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the jury whether it's different, the same, or in some ways both to 95 as between today and then?
Sustained.
All right. How do you describe the neighborhood of Cleveland Avenue back in 1995? How would you describe it in terms of the community?
Community, like a better terminology, wasn't aggressive. That part of the Cleveland Avenue really was not a high crime area or gang activity respondent back in 95 to 97.
And that was the length of time that you worked evening patrol, 95 to 97?
Yes, ma'am.
And typically, what types of crimes did you have the most opportunity to respond to in that area?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Overruled.
Mostly shootings, like I said, robberies, burglaries, things of that nature.
Would you describe for the jury your, you mentioned there was not a lot of particular kind of activity. Did that change? Has that changed today?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a particular kind of crime that you see more of today that you did not see back in 95?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury what types those are?
Mostly gang activity shootings, related shootings.
Now, after you left Evening Watch Patrol of Zone 3, what station did you take up at APD?
Yes, ma'am. I was transferred to the Red Dog Unit, Evening Watch and Day Watch.
How long did you work the Red Dog unit?
About 3 to 4 years.
Now, after the Red Dog unit, what was your assignment?
I was promoted from the Red Dog Unit to a detective, And my first assignment was the burglary unit,
And what year was that?
2000. No, 2000, yes, ma'am.
Prior to joining the Atlanta Police Department, would you tell the jury what your education was?
Yes, ma'am. Graduated high school on time, associate's degree, and at that time I went into the military, U.S. Army,
How long did you serve in the Army?
roughly about 6 years.
And what was your station? What was your job in the Army? Without getting into too much detail, just generally speaking.
Soldier.
Okay. Are you originally from Atlanta?
No, ma'am.
Did you come to Atlanta after you left the Army?
No, ma'am. I was here.
Okay. After you joined the burglary unit, tell the jury what your responsibilities included.
Investigating burglaries, whether it was commercial or residential burglaries.
Was there a particular area of Atlanta you were responsible for?
Yes, ma'am. My primary zone was the Zone 1, and my secondary was Zone 3.
What area of Zone 1 were you responsible for? I'm sorry about that static.
That's fine. We believe if anyone's familiar with the Bluff area, Donnelly, Hollowell, Hollywood Road, everything over in that generally Perry Boulevard.
Hang on one second. I'm trying to solve this problem.
That's pretty constant.
Sorry about that. And how long did you serve in the burglary unit?
2 years.
After the burglary unit, what did you do?
I was transferred to the robbery unit.
Is that me, Judge, or is that?
I have no idea.
All right, what was your position with the robbery unit?
Detective, and my primary zone was Zone 3. The secondary zone was Zone 1.
Were you patrolling the same or responsible for the same area in the robbery unit as you had been when you were in a Zone 3 evening watch patrol officer?
Yes, ma'am. Except I had the whole entire zone.
Okay.
I mean, yes, the whole entire zone,
All
A sector and B sector.
Did you interact often with the residents of Zone 3?
Yes,
During your time as a patrol officer and as a detective in the robbery unit?
yes, ma'am.
Was your interaction only when you were arresting people or investigating suspects?
No, ma'am.
What other types of interactions did you have?
At that time, I was also working at part-time as a Atlanta Public School resource officer. And the school I was assigned was the Crawford Long Middle School, which is right off of Cleveland Avenue.
Would you tell the jury what years those were that you worked as a Crawford Long Middle School resource officer?
I would say it'd be from 2001 to 2012, 2013.
And what were your responsibilities as a resource officer with Crawford Long?
Primarily maintaining the safety and security of the school.
How did that work out for you? Is that school area safer?
Walking around, patrolling the grounds, make sure the teachers' cars or anyone visiting school wasn't cars when getting broken in, things of that nature.
Did you have interaction with the students outside of investigating car break-ins and the like?
Yes, ma'am.
And would you describe for the jury what types of interactions that you'd have with the students at Crawford Long Middle School? Your Honor, as it pertains to particular people that are involved in this case, his knowledge of them and the jury's awareness of his foundation.
His attention to that.
Did you interact with the court's indulgence? I'd just like to ask a broader question and narrow it down. I won't prolong that. Did you interact with the students and converse with them on a personal level?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with the students' parents at times?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interact with a student by the name of Quindarius Zachary?
Yes, ma'am.
Describe your, when you first met Quindarius Zachary, how old was he?
I say he had to be about 11 years old.
Detective Squirrel Brain. How many kids do you approach as a police officer? That would be a much more interesting question. No, I don't allege anything. I'm just having fun with this kind of testimony. Oh, you were a school cop for middle schoolers, and now you get questions. How many of them did you interact with? That could be, yeah. Why does Love not stand at podium and use that microphone? Probably because she wants the witness to be turned towards the jury box. That would be my guess.
And in what capacity did you interact with him? Was it?
Usually times when he was misbehaving, and I would just take him to the side and talk to him rather than seeing him being suspended or suffering school punishment. I try to talk the kids to the side, get them out of trouble, and once again put them back into the classroom.
What year was that you got to meet Quindarius Zachary?
Can I recall right offhand? Probably around 2010, maybe.
Did you establish any level of trust with the students? Would they come to you and talk with you about things that they were encountering?
Yes, ma'am.
As students?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you say you talked to them, did you talk with them only about scholastic things, or did you talk with them about things like getting involved with groups that they shouldn't get involved with?
Yes, ma'am. All of the above.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Back then in 2010, did you see any signs of what you believe to be the formation of gang activity within Crawford Long?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, God. So this wannabe gang expert is now going to... oh, I saw all the gang. Okay, did you report it? No. I'm so sick of these wannabe gang experts who probably did more to promote gangs and violence than the gangs themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what was it that you saw that led you to believe that?
The kids was constantly discussing the gang that was starting to sprout. They was calling themselves the Red Cartel.
No, I heard you. It looks like Mr. Short's also about to say something.
Same objection.
thing. Overruled.
You may continue.
Yes, they would say something about a gang sprouting up called the Red Cartel.
You may continue.
Okay.
What is the evidence other than this squirrel brain's word for it? Is that it? Is that it?
They call themselves the Red Cartel, and they was becoming very prominent over in the Cleveland, Springdale.
I'm quite sure this is the first time in this entire trial Red Cartel has ever been mentioned.
Cleveland Avenue area, Old Hateville area, Macon Drive area.
Apart from hearing the name Red Cartel, did you see any indicators or signs of the ways that people calling themselves Red Cartel identify themselves?
They would mostly wear the color red.
Did you ever see them, without specifically showing any gang signs, did you ever see them display any signals that were
For fuck's sake.
seemingly unique to members of the group itself?
No,
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. I don't believe that there's a proper foundation for this witness.
Your Honor,
Is this the first time this witness has testified?
yes.
Okay, you need to lay a foundation.
Now?
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. When you started out as a school resource officer at Crawford Long Middle School, would you describe for the jury what type of training that you had had with the Atlanta Police Department?
had basic academy training along with interviews, interrogation training, also burglary and robbery. And later during that tenure, I was transferred to the homicide unit, which I received numerous homicide classes and training.
What training or experience did you have that caused you to form or to believe that you recognized gang activity when you saw it at Crawford Long Middle School?
Basically just growing up. It was prominent in Chicago.
You're from Chicago?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What part is?
Oh, for fuck's sake. You can't be serious. Another, oh, I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in the mountains up north. I'm not a geologist because of that. Jesus Christ.
Chicago.
South Side.
Now, what did you see growing up that caused you to believe that what you were looking at Crawford Long were signs of gang activity?
It was the same standard. Kids would wear like red bandanas or clothing of red, some article on them with red. Usually with the red bandana, we called it flagging. Show people who you represented. At that time, once I received that information, I notified the gang unit.
Your
and
Honor,
let-
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object to relevance, lack of foundation, and this line of questioning, I don't believe is going to lay a foundation. So that's why I'm saying relevance as well.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. You may continue. Please speak to the jury.
Okay. At that time, I notified the Atlanta Police gang unit, and they confirmed that that it was.
Sustained.
Without speaking specifically
Okay.
about confirmation in particular instances, more broadly speaking, when you did see things
So the gang unit, because they need to be in existence and keep having their salaries. Yeah, sure. That sounds like a gang. Jesus.
that you believe were gang activity, did you notify the gang unit?
Yes, I did, ma'am.
Why did you do that?
Just to alert them and to get more information for myself.
In talking with the kids at Crawford Long Middle School, did they confide in you about their involvement in, for instance, groups like Red Cartel? I'm not asking what they said.
Sustained.
Okay. Without speaking specifically about what they said, what types of things beyond what you've already testified about did you gather from the students that allowed you to help them navigate?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
How often did you talk with students' parents?
Usually when they come to pick up the kids or student got in trouble.
And when you saw things that concerned you that you alerted the gang unit about, did you ever talk to the students' parents about those same things?
Overruled.
You may tell the jury.
The parents that were receptive of listening, there were some that wanted to hear, and there were some that didn't want to hear.
Did you ever speak with groups of students, or was it just individual ones about trying to stay out of or trying to avoid particular pitfalls? Your Honor, I am,
Overruled.
you can continue.
Yes, I would talk to them in a group or talk to them individually.
Let me guess. Drugs are bad. They can, if you start with this plant, you will do this. I mean, I remember the information in school. If anything, that made it more attractive, especially when a cop tried to be morally superior. Oh.
And were the subjects of the conversation always how to stay out of trouble?
Yes, ma'am.
Did it work?
Did you share
No!
with the
So you did a bad job at it.
students the information that you had from growing up or other sources about gang activity?
Sustained.
In what ways, beyond talking to the students, did you attempt to keep students from being involved in gangs?
Sustained.
Did the information that you were able to gather from the students in any way inform your investigations and ability to get information about criminal investigations later on as a detective?
Yes, ma'am.
How?
I developed rapport with several of the kids. A trust was formed, and they would, if they see me out on the scene,
You thought they had trust in you? Wow, this guy is a yeah. Yeah, I understand why Woody called him Squirrel Brain. It's not much going on inside there.
anywhere near that, they'll come to me next day in school and say, "Hey, officer."
Generally speaking,
Yes,
they would come to you and would they offer you information?
yes, ma'am.
Other than Quindarius Zachary, were you familiar with any other persons that, through your investigation in this case, that you came in contact with?
Yes, ma'am.
Who were you familiar with during your time as a school resource officer?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object under 404A.
What's your response?
Your Honor, I'm not certain what exactly
Maybe tailor your question.
okay.
Yeah, maybe.
What other
Prosecutor Love
persons
asked.
did you know during your time as a school resource officer that you also interacted with or taught or gained knowledge about during this case?
Same objection, Your Honor.
Do you understand the objection? Can you tailor your?
Did you know any other Trontavia Stevens? Did you know Trontavia Stevens?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What age did you learn about or did you meet Trontavia Stevens?
Age 11.
Was he a student as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Was he a student at Crawford Long Middle School?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you know Shannon Stillwell as a young person?
No, I did not know Shannon Stillwell.
Did you know Diamante Kendricks?
I knew of him. I never had any interaction with him.
Did you know of him as a young child?
Yes, I think as he was getting to high school, yes.
What about Quentin Porter? Did you know of him?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he a young child or was he an older person when you got to know him or knew of him?
I believe I met him when he was in 7th or 8th grade.
Okay. Of the people that you've named so far that you met, did you interact with them in the same way that you did with Quindarius Zachary, or did they not talk with you as much?
They talked with me, but that was about it. They talked, but they never.
Okay. All right. What year was it that you were promoted to a homicide detective?
2004.
And during your time as a homicide detective, have you been recognized or given any special awards for your work as a homicide detective?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection,
Yes.
Your Honor,
Tell the ju-
relevance.
Sustained.
Would you tell the jury how many homicides you've investigated during your time as a homicide detective?
Close to over, maybe as lead and assistant, probably close to 300, maybe more than that.
And now we know why so few homicides are solved in Atlanta. This Yahoo was lead or involved in 300 of them. Oh, wow.
Now, were all of these within the city of Atlanta, or did you ever have an occasion to interact with or investigate crimes that were outside the city of Atlanta but connected with crimes that you were investigating in the city of Atlanta?
Yes, part of Atlanta is also in DeKalb County, so I worked some cases that was Atlanta, DeKalb County, and also Atlanta, Fulton County.
Would you describe for the jury some of the training that you received as a homicide detective that allowed you to perform your duties that was different than the training you received as a patrol officer or a burglary detective?
Yes, interviews and interrogations, reading crime scenes, logging things, crime scene processing.
And as a homicide detective, were you involved in investigations that related to purported gang activity?
I'll repeat that again, ma'am.
As a homicide detective, did your investigations ever involve gang activity, the
Yes.
homicide investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you share information with other law enforcement officers as it related to gang-related homicides?
Yes, ma'am.
And how, if ever, you were trained to recognize gang activity while you were performing your investigations? What kind of training have you received?
It was the processing of the scene, doing thorough background checks on the victim or witnesses, finding out different incidents may have happened at the location prior to the homicide.
That is not training. That is your method. What was your training, Detective Squirrel Brain? Training, not the method. Jesus Christ.
That incident.
Did your rapport with community members aid you in furthering your investigations as it related to potential
Objection, Your Honor,
gang
leading.
homicides?
Objection, what?
Leading.
Sustained.
What about your interactions with the community, if anything, helped you learn more when you were investigating gang-related homicides?
Yes, I would go talk to people that lived in the area of the incident. And at that time, I take them to the side and have a low-key conversation with them, and they'll advise me of, well, this is what they've been hearing, or this is what they know.
Did you
Oh,
always
hearsay.
identify the people who
Rumor.
gave you information as
Gossip.
witnesses? Or were there times when people gave you information and didn't want to be identified?
Correct. There's several times people want to give information, but didn't want to get involved any further than that.
And did you respect their wishes not to be involved, or did you list them and sort of out them as having given you information?
No, I respect their wishes.
Okay. Would you tell the jury, as a homicide detective, how it is that you come to be assigned to any particular homicide?
What we have in Atlanta Police Homicide Unit is called a unit rotation. So it doesn't matter if you work one of the other shifts, day watch, which is 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., or evening watch, which is 2 to 12 midnight. It's kind of like a pitcher rotation in baseball. If you catch a case today, you're not due to catch a case until you come back up. So say there's 30 detectives. If you're number one, you go down to number 30. Number 2 becomes number 1. Number 3 comes number 2, and it goes like that. So it doesn't matter if you're off or it's past your shift time. If the call comes up, you have to come in and respond to it.
And during the time that you're not up, is that the time that you're able to investigate whatever homicides that you do catch on your rotation?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. When you arrive on a scene of a homicide, are there any particular steps that you take to jumpstart your investigation?
Upon arriving, I try and brief with the first responding officers and first responding detective on the scene, see what information he or she has gathered prior to my arrival.
Is it your practice?
That's not jump starting an investigation. That is ordinary police work.
Has it been your practice to attempt to identify witnesses on scene if there are any?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it your practice to identify or attempt to identify surveillance footage if there is any?
Yes, ma'am.
Like the surveillance footage the prosecution claimed never existed in the laundromat incident, and during cross-examination, we discovered, not only was there a surveillance camera, cops actually watched the surveillance video. Like that kind of surveillance, Ms. Love? And when you're asking about witnesses, is he like Detective Velasquez, who deleted witness statements because he didn't like them and had the witness repeat until he found a story he liked? Like that kind of finding witnesses?
How do you go about determining whether or not there is surveillance footage at a particular location?
We walk around and you try and see if there's cameras fixated on the structures, or you go inside and see if there's door ring cameras on some of the residents, or you go inside the business and see if they have a camera that may be facing out their front windows.
As the lead detective, do you delegate responsibilities in the investigation of the homicides that you're responsible for, or do you handle every aspect of that investigation?
We delegate.
What types of activities do you delegate to other persons?
Depending on how many homicide detectives on the scene, I have them do what is called a neighborhood canvas. They automatically go around, start knocking and talking to people, and also looking for surveillance cameras and things of that nature.
And do you work with the VIC unit to determine whether or not there are? Do you ever work with the VIC unit?
Yes.
And how long have you worked with the VIC unit?
Since their first inception and coming into work with the APD, we usually call down and ask them, do they have any VIC cameras in the immediate area? And they're able to tell us they have cameras at this location, either facing north, east, south, or west. At that time, we give them the time frame of the incident, and they're able to go back and take a look and see exactly if they have any footage of anything that may be relevant to our homicide investigation.
Has the number of VIC cameras remained constant over the time that you've worked as a homicide detective?
No, ma'am.
Would you explain how they've not remained constant? Have they increased, decreased?
They're increased because of the success of the video integration camera systems.
Because of the what now?
Video integration camera system that is increased because of their reliability.
Okay. Would you explain to the jury whether license plate readers and VIC cameras are the same or different?
They're different. The license plate reader picks up on a tag of a vehicle, stores it in, and they would tell you exactly which direction that vehicle has been traveling, what other LPR readers it has hit on.
I wish I started a bit later so I could fast forward to cross-examination, because this is not interesting at all. And whatever important things this guy has to say, we will find out in cross-examination.
So you can go back and backtrack to see exactly where that vehicle may have started or came from.
Is there any particular information you need to be able to track a vehicle with license plate readers?
Sometimes we're able to give a make and model
Mhm.
and description of the vehicle.
Mhm.
And once again, the LPR teams are able to go in and say, okay, we found this vehicle that looks like the vehicle you're talking about. We see that the license plate reader is showing that it was in the immediate area at the time of the incident.
Okay. Now, have license plate readers always been in effect within the city of Atlanta during your time?
No, ma'am.
And do you know or remember when you all first would have had access to license plate readers?
I want to say probably around maybe 2018, 2019.
Has the number of license plate readers since that time that you're familiar with remained constant, increased, decreased, or something in the middle?
Increased.
And how do you know how it's determined where a license plate reader will be placed?
No, I tend to think that it's based on the high activity of traffic or whatever in that particular area, and also the crimes that may occur in that area.
And does the Atlanta Police Department decide where license plate readers will be placed?
I believe it's decided by City Hall and the police department talking
I need to go get myself some coffee. Give me a few minutes and, well, keep listening to this.
together.
And what about video integration unit cameras, VIC cameras? Who decides where those will be placed?
Same thing. I think it's a joint collaboration between City Hall and the Atlanta Police Department.
Do you obtain knowledge about whether license plate readers caught any particular information in the same way or different than you get information about VIC cameras? Or to ask a better question, how do you learn whether or not there are license plate readers that may have captured something you need in your investigation?
Once again, we'll call and see.
Sustained.
Your Honor, how do you know where the license plate readers are that might have captured something of interest in your investigation?
We call the unit and they'll tell us if they have a license plate reader in the immediate area, and they'll tell us exactly where it's positioned and what direction it's facing.
All right. Would you describe for the jury where the Summer Hill community is located?
It's located off of Rob David Abernathy and McDaniel Glen area. Down where the old Fulton County Turner Field used to be.
How much time have you spent working in that area?
I would say majority of the whole entire my career, 30 years.
Are you familiar with the Castleberry Hills area?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And how often have you worked in that area?
Per my patrol as a Red Dog officer and responding as a burglary detective, robbery detective, and homicide detective.
330 McDaniel Street. What area is that in?
That is the zone 1, zone 5 area. This is like a border.
Okay. And when you say border, is it a border between different communities?
No, it's a border between the zones.
Okay. What communities make up that area?
It's both residential, apartment buildings, businesses.
And is 330 McDaniel Street in Fulton County?
Yes, it is, ma'am.
Did you have an occasion to respond to that location on January 10th, 2015?
Yes, ma'am.
What time, if you recall, did you respond?
I believe I received the call around 9:30 p.m.
Yeah, just
from
making
Detective
myself
Darren
some
Smith,
coffee.
Atlanta Police Homicide Unit. He advised me that there was 3 subjects shot at that location.
Are you called only when there is a confirmed death? Or are you called before you know whether or not someone has died?
It depends on the status of the paramedics when they transport. If they say the person is low critical, we respond because there's a good chance they might not survive once they get down to Grady.
When you responded on January 10th, 2015, did you have any confirmed deaths?
Not until I arrived on the scene.
What information or what were you responding to?
I was responding to 3 subjects that were shot. One is low critical, one is in critical condition, one is in critical but stable condition.
And would you tell the jury what the names of those 3 subjects were?
Yes, ma'am. The first subject that was in critical condition was Donovan Thomas.
Mhm.
And I want to make sure I pronounce their names right. You might look at my notes.
No, and
Okay.
if you, I'll hand you a copy of your report.
Yes, ma'am. The second subject that was in critical condition was Reginald Hendricks, and the third that was in critical but stable was Cardarius Sanders.
Now, did you have an opportunity when you arrived on scene to speak with either of those 3 people?
No, ma'am, they was already transported to Grady.
All right. When you arrived on scene, had the scene already been cordoned off or roped off?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you arrived on scene, was there any other homicide detective already there assisting or directing?
Yes, ma'am. Detective Smith was on scene.
Now, was Detective Smith up in the rotation or
No,
were
ma'am.
yours?
No, ma'am.
So when a detective is not up in rotation, how is it that one homicide detective would be working a scene before you, if it's your homicide?
Yes, ma'am. That depending on how many subjects, how many detectives are working that day. There's a lead detective that will go out to the scene, gather the information, start processing, and they'll notify the next up homicide detective that there's a call and there's 3 subjects. Like on this day, 3 subjects that were shot.
How familiar with you were with the area of 330 McDaniel Street before you got that call on January 10th, 2015?
Very familiar.
Had you ever interacted with persons in that area on a casual basis as opposed to during an investigation?
Yes, ma'am. Doing an investigation.
And when you say during an investigation, is it only during investigations that you interacted with persons in the area?
Yes, ma'am. Just about. Yes, ma'am.
Were there or was there an apartment complex in that area?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember the name of the apartment complex?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
I believe that one across the street, down the street was Castleberry Apartments.
Okay. Were you familiar with, or had you had any occasion to visit or be familiar with Castleberry Hills Apartments?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got on scene, did you make any efforts to locate surveillance footage?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the jury what efforts you took to locate surveillance footage.
Immediately that caught my attention was there was cameras fixed on the barbershop at 330 McDaniel Street.
This has already been testified to by other people.
Also, I noticed that there were surveillance cameras down at the gas station at the intersection of McDaniel Street and Northside Drive.
Was it daytime, nighttime, something in the middle when you arrived on scene? I did not ask that question. No.
We know, yeah, we know the time, so.
Let me ask a better question. Was there daylight, moonlight? Was there natural light for you to see on scene when you arrived there?
No, the street was lit up with city lights.
And how were you able to see the cameras that you were able to identify?
They were just fixed on the building, so you can look up and see the cameras.
At the time that you saw them, did you know whether or not they were working?
No, I did not.
Did you take steps to find out?
Yes, I talked to the owners.
All right. And when that happens, are you able to get the camera footage on scene immediately, or do you do something to get that footage?
Yes, ma'am. I contact the cyber crimes unit, who goes out and retrieve all type of video surveillance for us.
Detective Teague, are you familiar with Detective Teague?
Yes, ma'am.
And what does Detective Teague do for you during your investigation?
Detective T went to those different locations and downloaded the video surveillance from those locations. I gave him the dates and the times.
Okay.
But not from the McDonald's, right?
Did you, at the time, know whether there were, or did you learn if there were any surveillance cameras at the apartments across the street from 330 McDaniel Street?
As I walked over there the next day, I saw that there was no cameras facing McDaniel Street.
And what other efforts, if any, did you take to get surveillance footage or any kind of captured footage of what happened at 330 McDaniel Street?
It was just those two locations that had cameras.
Okay. When you said that you went to the Texaco, where were you focusing? Where was it that you understood the shooting to have occurred?
The shooting happened right in front of the barbershop. The vehicle was traveling down McDaniel Street to Northside Drive and made a right onto Northside Drive. And that would place it right in the path of the Texaco cameras.
How did you learn what the vehicle did without saying anything that anyone specific told you? How did you learn?
People that was on the scene.
Okay. And at the time, on scene, the night of January 10, 2015, did you get any specific details about the make and model of the car? Any definitive details?
No, ma'am, except that it was probably a silver or a light gray colored vehicle.
Okay. When the Atlanta Police Department investigates a homicide, do they have ways of soliciting information from the public that might assist in the investigation?
Yes, we have what is called the Crime Stoppers hotline. Information given that leads to a portion of the investigation or successful arrest of the investigation. There's a $2,000 reward for any information given.
And where do you display that? Do you put it on TV? Do you put it in newspapers or something else?
It's displayed on TV, and also we post flyers around the neighborhood.
Did you do this with the McDaniel Street murder that you investigated?
Yes, ma'am.
What was it that you put on TV?
Basically, there was a subject that came inside with an assault rifle. When I identified who that person was, but they were not on scene when I got there.
Now, when you say a subject that came inside with an assault rifle, inside where?
The barbershop, I'm sorry, the barbershop.
And why did you put that particular footage on?
Because I want to see what this person was a person of interest that may be related to the shooting itself, that he may have been one of the shooters.
Did you later learn whether that person had any relationship to either of the victims?
Yes.
And what did you learn that person's relationship was to either of the victims?
I learned through the parent that was their son and the brother of the decedent.
Other than the footage of the person going into the barbershop, did you have any other footage displayed on television to try and help in your investigation?
I believe we just closed captioned the screen of the vehicle coming by. We didn't show the actual shooting itself, just the vehicle.
And when you say closed caption the screen, did you do a still shot or did you play a portion of a video surveillance?
Yes, what we did, we condensed it down so that the shot would just show that's the vehicle coming down the street. And we had a couple of still shots in there of the vehicle, but we never showed the victim getting shot themselves.
And did you show footage from the barbershop or the Texaco?
The barbershop.
Did you ever display any footage from the Texaco on TV?
No, ma'am.
How do you decide which footage you're going to put out there and which footage you're going to hold back?
Based on the relevance, because the Texaco did not show the actual shooting itself. The barbershop did.
To your knowledge, did you all get Crime Stoppers calls or people calling in after you put up the video from in front of the barbershop?
Yes, ma'am.
It would be really interesting to find out what other tips they got on that line. Other people, other cars. Yes, Bodhi, this is the detective squirrel brain, also known as Thorp.
When you arrived on scene, were there people who were willing to talk with you and have their names listed as witnesses?
There are people willing to talk, but they don't want to list their names.
And how did they make that known to you?
Simply by giving me the information. And I said, you want to come down and talk to me? And they're like, no, that's all. As far as I'm getting involved, this is who's involved.
Are you able to force people to get involved more when you're conducting crime scene investigations?
No, ma'am.
Are you not able to take people down to the police station if they tell you that they have some information?
We can ask them for their consent. If they say no and we force them down, that's called kidnapping.
Okay. All right.
Like you did with QZ, Prosecutor Hilton. QZ never said he was not going to show up to court. Never said that. But they arrested him anyway. Got him when he was released from hospital and put him in Rice Street. And I read up a bit about sickle cell anemia. And after treatment, first of all, you have a bad immunity cover as it is with this illness. The blood transfusions help, but after the treatment, the patient has to be rigorous with diet, sleep, environment to not get an infection that ruins the entirety of that treatment. And probably Miss Hilton's actions nullified that last treatment. And now he is in hospital again.
Did you have any persons that you were able to talk to, but you were able to also list out their names?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember who those people were?
One person in particular was a person by the name of Spencer Wright.
Now, let me ask you this. Was at the time you went to 330 McDaniel Street on January 10th, 2015, did you see a Spencer Wright on scene?
No, ma'am.
Did you talk with a Spencer Wright on scene?
No, ma'am.
How long after January 10th, 2015, did you talk with Spencer Wright? Without saying anything Spencer Wright said?
Probably around the month of October 2015, maybe.
And was there anyone with you when you learned of Spencer Wright?
Yes.
Who?
Detective Gaither of the Games Unit.
When you
Detective Gaither. Remember her? She will probably show up again. Detective Gaither is, in my opinion, the least competent cop I've ever heard testify in a trial. She left the Atlanta Police Department after just before 19 years, so no full pension. Then she got a job in a neighboring county as a district attorney investigator, and she quit after just a few months. For you who don't know, hi, I'm Nick. I do labor law. I can tell you with a high degree of certainty after 30 years doing labor law, she got the option of either you quit or you're fired. And she is one of the gang experts in this trial. And apparently so is Detective Squirrel Brain.
First began your investigation into Donovan Thomas Jr.'s murder. Was it a joint investigation with the gang unit, or did you do something to have them become involved?
It was a joint investigation. They were providing me with information and intel stemming from their investigations on gang-related activities. And what they deemed may be relevant for my investigation, they passed it on to me.
Did you delegate any duties to members of the gang unit to aid you in your investigation?
Some just.
Or better yet, did they offer up assistance?
Yes, ma'am.
Who within the gang unit offered up assistance in your investigation into the Donovan Thomas murder?
Detective Gaither and Detective Dennis.
Detectives Kling, Clang, and Clong.
Gain information that allowed you to interview people in relation to the homicide without saying any information that you gained, just yes or no. Did you get information?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you conduct interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, the night of the homicide, did you direct anyone to reach out to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And who did you direct to reach out to you?
Kenneth Copeland.
How did you reach out, or how did you direct Kenneth Copeland to reach out to you?
Upon returning to the homicide office so I can start my investigation.
Detective Thorp, do you know your nickname given to you by Copeland? Squirrel Brain.
I got alerted by the Zone 3 Morning Watch Mobile Patrol of a shooting that just happened on Vanira.
Mhm.
And from what the officers gathered was that this was.
Sustained.
We won't talk with
Okay.
you about the officers on Van Iron
Okay.
and what they said.
Okay, ma'am.
But were you able to determine whose residence or what was on Van Ira at that location that the officer told you about?
Yes, it was Kenneth Copeland's baby mother's house.
All right. And how did that cause you? Why was that of interest? And to ask a better question, what did you do after you spoke with the officer about the shooting on Van Ira?
At that time, I went out to the scene myself.
Okay. Did you speak with anybody on scene at Van Ira?
Yes.
Who did you speak with without saying what they said?
I believe her last name was, no, let me get the notes.
Nope, I don't mind at all.
I don't want to mess up her last name. Quartermain. Deshawn.
Deshaun Quarterman?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And did you speak with anyone else?
I spoke with Kenneth Copeland over her phone, over her cell phone.
All right. What did you see at Van Ira that caused you to be interested in talking to Kenneth Copeland? What did you see?
There were assault style rounds, spent shell casings in the middle of the street.
Now, were you able?
What? I need to hear.
There were assault style rounds.
What is an assault style round? Is that a hollow point? Is it steel point? Is it pure copper? What is an assault style round? Or is that just another way to say, oh, the bullet? Jeff.
Spent shell casings in the middle of the street.
Now, were you able to see what type of shell casings, if any, were on scene at 330 McDaniel Street?
Yes, ma'am.
And what type, if you recall, did you observe on scene at 330 McDaniel Street?
At 330 McDaniel Street, there were 7.62 assault rifle rounds. There were 45 caliber rounds.
Okay, assault rifle rounds. Completely, but yeah, as Gwenlyn says, all bullets are designed to assault. This is just word salad, making stuff sound worse than they actually are. It's a bullet that fits in a gun. Yeah, I mean, what was the caliber? 222? I have no idea.
And 9mm caliber rounds.
How familiar are you with firearms?
Very familiar.
And what training have you received in firearms over your career, not only as a law enforcement officer, but in the military?
Extensive.
Tell the jury what kind of training.
Basically, the uses of the weapon, the safety of the weapon, and what particular weapon is able to fire what kind of round.
All right.
That's your training? That's not specialized training.
Have you had occasion to fire those type of weapons that you saw shell casings for on scene at 330?
Yes, ma'am.
What you saw on Vanira, were they similar type rounds? Not necessarily caliber. Were they similar or different?
They were assault rifle rounds, so they similar but not similar.
Okay. And when you
There. AK normally chambered 7.62, but there are 5.56 made. Yeah. The old Swedish AK-4 was a 7.62. The newer AK-5 was a 5.56 for stability and, well, a lot of reasons. Cheaper was one of them. And more reliable. The AK-5 Swedish Army with the thumb switch on the side, amazing. Okay, one bullet, semi-automatic, and full automatic. Those were so much fun. Yeah, hammer is an assault weapon when you use it as well. Yeah. Sweden have to go NATO standard 2 now. Yeah, but NATO standard is 7.62 and 5.56, if I remember correctly. I'm not sure.
say similar but not similar, could you explain a little bit more?
The 7.62 rounds that was recovered from 330 McDaniel Street are typically fired from AK-47 assault rifle. Any rifle, any.
No. 7.62 is fired from a gun that is made with a 7.62 caliber. Yeah, an AK-47. Hold on, I need to check this. Okay, normal ammo is 7.62. But let's see here, 7.62, the RM1, type 38, type 56 carbine. Norink, type 56. Let's see here, Finnish KK62. Italy's Beretta ARX 160. The Ukraine Malyuk. The US Ruger Mini 30. The Desert Tech MDR. Yeah, there's a lot of it, but they missed out this. I'm checking through a Wikipedia page, but they missed out on the Swedish AK-4. Maybe because it's decommissioned. I don't know. It should be in there. Let's return to the trial.
Rifle built off that schematic. The rounds that we recovered from Vanira was rounds that was associated with the AR-15
Okay.
assault rifle.
Do you recall how many rounds you observed at Vanira?
I want to say possibly 10 to 12, 10 to 15, something like that.
Did you observe any damage to any structures or property at Vanira?
Yeah, there were some defects to the residence.
Were there any people shot at Vanira?
No, ma'am.
Were there people at home at the time that the residence was shot up or something different?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you stay on scene at 330 McDaniel Street from when you first arrived?
I believe I arrived probably about 4, maybe 5 hours.
Okay. So approximately what time did you leave?
I left probably around 1:30 a.m.
And what time would you say that you went to check out Vanira?
Probably about, the call came in, I want to say probably around 1:40, 1:45 a.m.
And how long, where were you when that call came in? Had you made it back to police headquarters or were
Yes,
you
ma'am.
still on scene?
I made it back to police headquarters.
And how long did it take you to get to Vanira after you got that call?
Probably about 10 minutes.
Did Deshaun Quarterman offer to have you speak with Mr. Copeland, or did you ask her to call Mr. Copeland?
I asked her to call Mr. Copeland.
Did she tell you her relationship to him before you asked her to call him?
Yes, ma'am.
And were you able to get his phone number from her or any information like that?
No, ma'am.
How long did you speak with Mr. Copeland?
Roughly about maybe 3 minutes, just to let him know that he needs to come down to the office and talk to me.
Did he come down to the office and talk to you?
Yes, he did.
Do you have any idea how long after you asked him to come down and talk to you that he actually arrived at the police station?
I want to say probably between 20 to 30 minutes.
When he came to the police station, do you recall, did you meet him in an interview room at the police station?
No, actually, I met him.
Oh,
No.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
I met him in the rear of the police headquarters.
Okay.
I was standing by, I'm sorry, I was standing by with his brother, waiting for him to get there.
Who is his brother?
I forgot his brother's name. I don't recall his brother's name.
Are you familiar with anyone by the name of Rontrez Brock?
Yes,
Do you remember whether that was the brother or was
yes, Rontrez Brock was the brother.
Now, how is it that you came to be standing there with Rontrez Brock?
Because he got word that people was coming after his brother.
When you met with Mr. Copeland and his brother behind the police department, was that something usual that you do? Like, why do you meet behind the police department as opposed to?
It was easier parking for them.
Okay.
Instead of having to park and walk all the way up, I just said, meet me here. I can get your brother in, get him upstairs and talk to him.
And did you get Mr. Copeland in and upstairs to talk to him?
Yes, I did.
Now, when you first saw Mr. Copeland, do you remember what his demeanor was like? Whether he was sad, happy, excitable, based on what you could observe and see, or something wholly different?
It was something totally different. He was even killed and he just kept asking, he don't know why people putting him in this.
Okay. Did you tell him that he had to come upstairs and talk with you?
No, I didn't tell him he had to come upstairs.
Did you have the ability at that time to force him, or would that have been another situation like kidnapping?
Yes, ma'am. There's been another situation like kidnapping.
Okay. Did his brother come upstairs and talk with you?
His brother came up and stood by outside.
All right. Did anybody else join Mr. Copeland in that police station?
No, not that I recall.
Okay. Do you remember about how long you talked to Mr. Copeland in the police station?
I think maybe a couple of hours, an hour or two.
Did you talk to him inside an interview room, outside an interview room, or both?
Inside the interview room.
Did you start any conversations before you got to the interview room?
No, just basically that.
Oh, you lying sack of shit. Woody testified to that they had discussions outside of the interview room. This detective squirrel brain probably listened to it and is now, oh no, never said that, never did that, only recorded interviews, which is bullcrap. Absolute bullcrap.
His name had come up in the investigation.
Okay. Now, when you have people that you want to talk to, are these interview rooms always equipped with recording devices, video and sound?
Yes, ma'am.
Are they running constantly or do you turn them on before you take someone inside?
You turn them on and you log it in to our database up under your particular case number.
Okay. And when you began talking with Mr. Copeland, did you read him any Miranda rights or just start?
No, ma'am, because he was not under arrest, so it was a non-custodial interview. So there's no need for me to Mirandize him. We just started conducting the formal interview with him.
When you began conducting the interview with Mr. Copeland, did you have any particular?
And weeks after he had this interview, they charged Woody because they didn't believe a word he said in the interview.
Particular target in mind that you wanted to have him implicate?
No, ma'am, no particular target.
And as you interviewed him, did you attempt to get him to tell you somebody did any particular thing?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And were you telling him the people that you wanted him to talk about, or were you asking him for information or something in the middle?
Yeah, I was asking for information and pretty much the question was always in the middle.
Okay. When you began talking with Mr. Copeland, did you have knowledge about any people that you wanted him to give you information on?
No, ma'am.
All right. And during the course of your conversation with Kenneth Copeland, did you get information that led you to other people you were interested in talking to?
On that initial night, no.
Yeah. And was there any particular concern that you understood Mr. Copeland to have that night?
Other than he spoke about an altercation.
I had to check because in the chat somebody said something about Sweden has to adapt to NATO standards, and I found the information that it is chambered for the 556 times 45 millimeter NATO cartridge. So yes, the Swedish AK-5 already NATO adapted.
And when he spoke about an altercation, did you say anything to suggest to him that you knew about the altercation?
Somewhat, yes, ma'am.
Now, did Mr. Copeland's, did he ask you questions during the interview?
Things just general questions like, how did my name come up in this? Once again, I don't know why.
Did he try to get you to help him in any way in terms of ensuring his safety?
Yes, ma'am. He wanted me to speak with the family of Donovan Thomas, let them know that he had nothing to do with it and stop coming after him.
Okay. Now, did he know, or did you tell him that it was these people coming after him, or was he just speculating, to your knowledge?
He was just speculating.
Okay. Did you give him any assurances about what you would do to try and ensure his safety?
Yes, ma'am. I told him I would speak with the family and let them know that at this point in time, he is not a person of interest or a suspect.
And when you gave him that assurance, when you told him that, did you have any information that anybody in Donovan Thomas's family was involved in shooting at Kenneth Copeland or his family?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No information.
At the time that you told Kenneth Copeland that, had you spoken with any member of Donovan Thomas's family?
Not at that time.
Did you at any point go to the hospital where Donovan Thomas was taken?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
The next day.
All right.
Well, the morning of the next day.
11?
Yes, ma'am. The 11th, the morning of the 11th.
How long after you spoke with Kenneth Copeland did you go to the hospital?
I want to say close to midday. Close to afternoon, because I went and spoke to the other two surviving victims.
Okay. Without saying what they said, were they able to communicate with you at the time that you talked with them?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And let's start with Mr. Sanders. Without saying what he said, was he willing to talk to you?
Yes, ma'am.
And did he offer up any information about who it was that committed the shooting?
No, ma'am.
And what about Mr. Reginald Hendricks?
Yes, ma'am. He's willing to talk.
Do you remember how long you talked to each one of them?
Because they were down at Grady, I made sure I didn't do an extensive, interview with them. So I had to say probably about 20 minutes apiece, no more than 20 minutes.
Were either of them under arrest at the time you spoke with them?
No, ma'am.
Did you do anything like read Miranda rights or anything like that?
No, ma'am.
Were there people in the room with Cordarius Sanders when you talked with him?
Yes, ma'am.
Who was in the room?
His mother.
Did his mother communicate with you without saying what she said? Did his mother give you any information that helped you in your investigation?
No, ma'am.
Was his mother the only person in the room with him?
Then I can recall, yes, ma'am, that I spoke with.
Do you remember how old Cordelia Sanders was at the time?
I want to say maybe he was 14, something like that, 14, 15. He was a juvenile.
All right. And what about Mr. Hendricks? Was there anyone in the room with him when you spoke with him?
I don't recall anyone else in the room with him.
Do you remember about how old he was when you talked to him? Was he older than Mr.
Yes.
Sanders?
Yes, way older.
And was he able to give you any information about who committed the shooting?
No, ma'am.
Was he able to describe whether there was any acts of aggression that he saw that could have prompted the shooting?
No, ma'am.
By the time you talked to Mr. Sanders and Mr. Hendricks, had you had a chance to look at the surveillance video from either the barbershop or the Texaco?
No, ma'am, not that time.
Do you remember when the first time it was that you had a chance to look at the barbershop video?
Probably want to say probably later on that evening,
And what about the Texaco footage?
the next day.
Now, as you're looking at the barbershop footage, did you personally recognize anybody that you saw display faces of anybody that you saw out there?
No, ma'am.
What about the Texaco footage? Did you see anybody you personally recognize in the Texaco footage?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Okay. And I mean from when you first saw it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you, in releasing the information you released to the public, did you ever release a make and model of a car to your knowledge?
No, ma'am.
When you spoke with Mr. Copeland, did you ask him about being involved in any kind of accident?
Yes, ma'am.
Without talking about what anyone else said, do you know why you asked him about being involved in an accident?
Yes, ma'am, because I started a deep dive investigation on his name.
Uh-huh.
And put him through the APD, Atlanta Police database. And I was able to suss out several reports of him connected to being in an accident or traffic stops.
Okay. And were your questions based on whatever vehicle you saw reflected in that report, or
Yes,
something
ma'am.
different?
What was reflecting what people's description of people was given of the vehicle.
The incidents that you saw within the database, were they incidents that had occurred in 2015, January 2015, or earlier, 2014? Around what time frame?
I think there's time frames of 2012 to 2014.
Okay. Did you have the same kind of familiarity with Kenneth Copeland as a child that you did with Mr. Zachary?
No, ma'am.
When, if you recall, was the first time you knew about Kenneth Copeland? Like how old was, like around what year?
2015, the year of the incident.
Okay. Other than what you learned as you began investigating the murder of Donovan Thomas, did you have any other knowledge about Kenneth Copeland?
No, ma'am.
Did you ensure or did you offer to do anything else to, or offer any advice to Kenneth Copeland to help him secure the safety of his family? Did you make any suggestions?
I think probably
The odds of one of the first questions from the defense being, does he have all his reports? The odds of the question is really, really low. The actual reports existing, I assume it will be the same answer as with the other reports. Whoopsie, hacked. Only the things the hackers didn't take was the things we needed in our prosecution.
probably just
Okay.
suggestion of that nature.
Did Kenneth Copeland have any cell phones or anything with him that you saw when you first talked to him on January the 11th?
I didn't see him with a cell phone.
Now, do you remember Mr. Copeland offering you, and let me ask you this, the interview with Kenneth Copeland, it was recorded, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Now, when was the last time you could remember looking at that interview? Like, did I show it to you today?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember everything about that interview? Everything?
Not everything in detail.
Okay. Like the kind of clothing Kenneth Copeland was wearing. Do you remember that?
I could wrap thing with dark clothing.
Okay. All right. Did Kenneth Copeland offer to give you any information that might help you sort of determine that he should not?
I can't believe they are still trying to get 2015 Woody, the credible one. They are still trying to get a
be a target of any retaliatory shootings?
Yes,
All right. Did you follow up on the information that he gave you?
yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury the ways that you followed up on whatever Kenneth Copeland told you?
Yes, the information I got from Kenneth Copeland, I immediately went to Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither to see if they knew about this information. They knew about it. They gave me details on it. Even able to find that they had already started an investigation themselves into it, I believe.
How the frick could they already know information that Woody made up on the spot? You lying sack of shit. You're lying under oath, you crooked squirrel brain cop.
Your Honor, he's not.
The very last comment.
Well,
Say.
Your Honor, I would say that it is offered as a explanation for his investigation and why it is that he took certain steps. So, and also that the jury has heard from these witnesses as well.
Go ahead with your next question.
Before you got the information from Mr. Copeland that you went to investigators Dennis and Gaither about, did you personally know about any of that?
Not personally, no.
Need to refill my
Had
coffee.
you had any involvement with any persons that you knew called themselves YSL in any capacity?
No, ma'am.
Had you had any, did you have any knowledge about what YSL was before you talked to Kenneth Copeland?
I'll say that question again, ma'am.
Did you know about YSL at all before January 10th, 2015?
Overruled.
Yes,
Now, was the knowledge that you had of YSL, was it gained from your investigation, your time with as a detective, or something else?
my time as a detective, my time working in the school system.
Now, when you say your time working in the school system, about what year would you say you first heard about YSL?
I'm gonna say probably about maybe 2012, 2013.
Okay.
That's
about the first year that you heard of it?
yes,
Okay.
and
Did you conduct any investigations yourself into any group called YSL during that time?
no, ma'am.
Did you speak with, without saying what they said, did you speak with any students about a group called YSL?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many students you talked to?
All right, a total of 8 students.
You didn't do an investigation, but you investigated with the what?
I mean,
8 students.
and were you on school property or was it outside school at the house or some other?
School property.
Okay. Were there any particular incidents that led to your
This detective is on school property a bit too much.
speaking to these students about YSL?
Just I heard the name constantly coming up.
And was it you asking particular students or particular students just coming up to you
Just actually certain students I was very aware of and had a trust relationship with.
that you had a trust relationship with?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, was Quindarius Zachary one of the people you talked to about YSL or not?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember the names of the students that you talked to about YSL?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember the relative ages of the students?
Yes, ma'am.
So there are zero evidence you actually talked to any students. Zero.
About how old?
14.
And did you, during the time as a resource officer, did you personally observe any things that were being used to identify people
answered.
as YSL?
No.
Okay. Other than the name YSL, when you were a school resource officer, did you have any other information or knowledge about YSL?
About the name YSL, had no other information other than their previous names.
What do you mean the previous names?
The name went from the Red Cartel to the Rock Crew.
Now he's just making things up to help his other crooked cop friends. Red Cartel to Rock Crew. How is it this is the first time we ever heard about Red Cartel? They didn't ask anyone about Red Cartel. And he claims that Red Cartel turned into Rock Crew that then turned into YSL. Rock Crew, raised on Cleveland, specifically. You could not be a member of Rock Crew unless you were raised on Cleveland. Red Cartel, no idea. I never heard of the thing before Squirrel Brain here said it. And my interpretation, what happened then is that the Rock Crew dissolved because YSL had already begun. The label, the people attracted people who may or may not have wanted to get away from gang activity and make money. I bet you YSL had eons better. I bet you YSL made the street safer.
Which stood for Raised on Cleveland. Then it went over to YSL.
All right. Is this information that you learned? How did you learn this information that you just talked about?
Talking to the kids and working in the neighborhood.
All right. Did you ever speak
Yes,
with grown-ups, the family, the parents of the kids about YSL or these other groups, Red Cartel or Rock Group, without saying what they said?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Overruled.
Did you ever arrest anybody during the time just for being affiliated with Red Cartel, Rock Crew, or YSL?
No, ma'am.
Did you conduct any investigations that involved either of those groups, even after you learned about their existence from the students, but before January 10th, 2015?
As in the YSL name itself or the previous names?
Either.
Yes.
All right. How many investigations?
Probably total myself, probably a total of maybe 4 or 5.
What type of incidents? Forms his basis for his knowledge of other questions that he will be asked.
Overruled.
What type of incidents?
What knowledge? He's making shit up. He made shit up back then, and now he's making up shit again.
Were you investigating that you spoke to the jury about just now?
About aggravated assaults and homicides.
How many homicides?
Probably about 2.
Do you remember, in particular, the persons that were involved in the 2 homicides, victim and suspects? Your Honor, we've, based on the evidence we believe that has already come out and information that this witness can provide, we believe that the witness has information which will allow
Get the witness out of there if you're going to have a speaking objection like this. Now you're instructing the witness how to testify.
determination of certain material matters in this case. He can, I don't want to.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
Do I remember the victims' names?
Who were the victims in the 2 homicides?
The one particular I investigated, her name was Julian Jones.
And who was the suspect?
He was not a
Hang
suspect.
on. What'd you say?
I don't know what, but what, what is relevant?
I've
I mean,
never
we're
heard
talking
about that case.
information that will aid the jury in making determinations about.
Yes. Let's take a bathroom break anyway. It's probably about time for one.
May the witness be excused.
Yes. You can just step out. Thank you.
I do not remember what Julian, what? What the actual F is going on here? Are they trying to backdoor in another homicide? And why is he questioning minors without their parents present? When he went to schools and talked to kids. Oh, for fuck's sake. Why can't we hear this? Okay.
Bench conferences are always taken down. Bench conferences are never recorded. So this is a bench conference.
Oh, no, not
What?
this. Jesus Christ. Stop with the bench conference. This is not a bench conference. So they're actively hiding information from the public. Actively. This is not a sidebar. This bench conference is in open court. What a load of freaking bullcrap. Yeah, Love is going to want all of these to be bench conferences because then they have to turn the video off and send everybody out. This is bullcrap. Yeah, he was a resource officer before he became a cop. This is... Oh, wait.
Honestly, it's not because it's just an
Oh,
evidentiary issue, right?
yeah,
Yes.
evidentiary
Yes,
issue.
that's
It's not a bench conference. Ha! Screw you, Love.
All right, so that was a 414-2 and 403 objection to who the suspect was.
Right. That's I believe that was-
Ha! Miss Love tried to get a bench conference out of this. Adrian Love
I can
or
respond
my-
beyond just, I believe it's relevant.
Adrian Love or my endearing nickname for her, Nasty Coochie.
Are you gonna tell me why?
Your Honor, the homicide, I believe one of the homicides that the witness will talk about is a matter that an earlier witness talked about as it related to Rock Crew. I believe that the one that he is going to talk about is going to deal with Quentin Porter and Javaris Crittenton. I believe that this information corroborates information given by other witnesses and allows the jury to determine the credibility of information that they have heard from other witnesses. It's not bolstering because it's his personal knowledge, but to have information about a subject from two unrelated people who are not connected with one another, but are saying things that are consistent with one another, we believe allows the jury to determine things that are pertinent to this indictment, the existence of the enterprise, some of the information in the indictment about the start of the enterprise, its beginnings, the kind of crimes that have been committed, and some of the people that they've heard other witnesses talk about. So in as much as I think it was a 401 objection, it's relevant. We're talking about YSL and the beginnings of YSL and the groups from which YSL evolved. The relevant standard is a very low standard in as much as it's a 402 objection. Any relevant evidence is presumptively admissible. In as much as it's a 403 objection, I'm not sure what, I haven't heard any offer as to how it's substantially more prejudicial. I know I hear a lot about,
Is it that
I don't know.
prong of it, Mr. Steele, or something else?
Every prong of it, Your Honor.
Every problem.
Well, him saying every prong, Your Honor, any information that tends to prove an allegation in the indictment is going to be prejudicial to a defendant. And Mr. Steele or no one on behalf of the defendant Williams is offering up how it unfairly prejudices Mr. Williams for the state to be able to prove the elements in the indictment.
They haven't talked yet, you moron. They just objected under. This is not all. This is more. Hi, Gwendolyn. She's trying to get prior bad acts into it. I'm not even sure what these new crimes are. So this is backdooring in new stuff.
Existence of the gang, the beginnings of the gang as we allege, and the kinds of crimes and activities that the enterprise participates in, and the conspiracy itself. He hasn't. I don't know how it's unfairly prejudicial in such a way.
So the question that you asked was, who was the suspect of the murder? I mean, are you going to establish that he, I mean, just for somebody to be a suspect doesn't establish anything other than they were a suspect. Are you going to establish something beyond that?
The person's involvement. I'm not going to go whole hog into convictions and statements and things like that. I wanted to have the jury know people who were alleged to be involved and people he talked to. And as I said, I believe that even when the jury doesn't know from one witness exactly what a particular person did as it related to an incident, that information is then supplemented by other witnesses' testimony. It corroborates things that they have heard and will continue to hear.
What was that noise?
What no?
Okay, whose phone? Whose phone made that noise? Somebody knows whose phone made the noise. Whose phone made the noise? Okay, whether it's outside a bag or not, phones aren't supposed to be making noise. So if you can't turn the phone off before you come into court, then you're not going to be able to have the phone in court. Understand whose ever phone it was? Because that's disruptive, and they all need to be on silent. If you are permitted to have one at all because you have a Rule 22, it needs to not make any noise. If it happens again, you won't be permitted to have the phone in here. All right, go ahead, Ms. Love.
And this is a case that Trontavia Stevens, I believe that we've heard a little bit about. There were objections, I believe, prior to Your Honor coming on about getting deeper into it, but Trontavia Stevens was a material witness in that case. In fact, had to be arrested on a material witness warrant because of his unwillingness to cooperate in that case. And
Okay, I mean, I get, maybe I'm just not following. If the point of it is that Stevens was a material witness and knew something about it, how
no,
does?
that I'm
that's
tying
not
it
what
into members, alleged members of YSL and the activities that they participate in and the steps to which they go. They're the way that they operate as an enterprise, the existence of the
All
enterprise.
right, tell me how whatever you think this witness is going to say is going to do that.
It gives the jury the information that this witness is aware of a particular murder that involved Rock Crew, and then later YSL went
Those
Porter
being
and
Porter and Crittenden
Porter and Trontavia Stevens.
and Stevens,
Yes,
and he's going to be able to testify that they were involved in this murder?
no, they didn't do the murder. They
Okay,
were,
so what is it then?
Your Honor, their involvement and their association with one another, we have to prove association between members of YSL. We have to prove the type of enterprise it is. We have to, and the type of activities and the lengths to which they go.
This
to
is
protect
just
and
word
preserve it.
salad.
And what is it that this witness is going to say about either of those two people that's going to show that?
Your Honor, the existence of those people and their associations, number one, and it's not always going to be a linear, this person saying this directly proves a fact. It's
Well, what? Seriously? What? This is so stupid. Of course, you have to show a nexus, show the actual connection. Why do you need to talk about that murder or that homicide, and then all of a sudden switch over? These people weren't involved, but we suspect they are YSL. If they're not involved, they're not involved.
evidence that is relevant in that it gives the jury information.
Don't tell me what it's going to do. Tell me what the evidence is. I mean, I don't know your
Oh.
case as well as you do. So I don't know what it
Okay, I'm
is
sorry.
that you think this witness is going to say that's going to show any of that.
That Trontavia Stevens was what I know happened. So he was believed to have been set up by Big Boo. It was put out that he was set up by Big Boo. There was a break from Big Boo as a result of this particular murder. And that offshoot eventually produced YSL. Now, I don't expect that he's going to say all of that, but it's the connections between Porter and Stevens that I believe are.
Okay. And how is this witness going to testify to connections between Porter and Stevens?
Based on what his investigation and his involvement in the investigation of the murder. He interviewed.
Just going to show that these two people knew each other?
No,
You're
so
not telling me anything. So,
to the
I mean, I'm trying to follow you, but
to the extent that their relationship is one that
Ms. Love is scared of saying something factual because if that information turns out to be false, then she's in trouble with the judge. So Love doesn't know. She is so still used to Judge Glanville just, yeah, sure, go ahead, yada, yada, yada. Ms. Love just doesn't want to say anything factual because she knows, Ms. Love, that if the witness says, I have no idea what you're talking about, then she's screwed again. Not that anything will happen, but
has been described and will further be discussed. Your Honor, just 1 second.
maybe we'll all take a bathroom break, and then when you come back, you'll be
No, no,
able
no.
to
No, no.
articulate what it
No. Don't give her these chances. Stop it. Just say, well, don't stop helping her.
is. So let's all.
I can. I'll be able to
Yes,
better
Mr. Shaw.
consolidate. it.
Okay.
I'll be back.
For the record, I'd like to add my objection, which is going to be hearsay and confrontation clause on top of Mr. Steele's objections.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, I, at this point, have no idea what this detective might testify to. So I don't know, maybe we'll, everybody who needs to go to the restroom, and then we'll reconvene and try to hash this out.
Okay. And they are still on bathroom break. Yeah. Miss Love has no idea what the nexus is. She's trying to get in this new gang, Red Carpet, what was it? Red Cartel, became Rock Crew. This is the first time in this trial, and I mean pre-trial hearings, I have never heard anybody talk about a gang called Red Cartel. Not once. Now, might this be in discovery, and that is why the defense is objecting? I don't know, but Ms. Love, she can't show any nexus because she wasn't prepared to be questioned and to be object. And this is what we've been talking about a lot of times. Ms. Love is the type of person with narcissistic traits. She believes she can do no wrong. She's the ultimate interpreter of what's right and wrong, or whatever's. And when the judge questions her, she is really baffled because, well, I should get it in because it's me who says it. Why are you questioning me? And then you get the blah, 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 world of doom. Let's go to Suno.com, the AI music app, and see what they can get. Let's see here. Prosecutor Love can handle being West. Being wrong and when she is what do you call it, a wall of doom, the pause, the thingy, what do you call it in now I'm going to call it the world of doom. And oh, I know, in the style of a kid's show. Let's see what shows up. Yeah, buffering wheel. Thank you. I call it the whirl of doom. Thank you, buffering wheel. Buffering. Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, let's see here what AI music maker made for us. Let's check. Dun, dun, dun.
She wears a suit of justice bright. Prosecutor Love, we call her right. But when she's wrong, it's quite a sight. A whirl of doom in daylight. Her world spins round, she starts to pout. Impossible puzzles in her route. But just a smile can help her out. Friends make the sunshine shout. Oh, Prosecutor Love, don't you fear.
Now this is too positive. Evil Prosecutor Love can't handle being wrong. Okay. Yes, Nick, I did see Doug's tweet. Let me try to find it. The oh, Doug. All right. Evil Dr. Prosecutor Love. Evil Prosecutor Love. Let's see what. Yeah, I know they started, but we can catch up. Okay. Evil Prosecutor Love. Let's see if what shows up. Ah, here it is.
Locked away, play all day, all day. Every case goes her way. When she's wrong, she'll frown. Stormy clouds go pouring down. Eyes will sparkle when she's right, shining bright like the sunlight.
Nah, that's bad lyrics. Still, not that was too positive. I will make some. Yeah, let's go back to the trial because.
And it may be that based on Mr. Sharp's objection, I withdraw the question, but I'll just tell the court briefly. So Mr. Stevens was believed by Mr. Crittenden to have robbed him, stolen some of his jewelry. As a result, it is believed that Mr. Porter alerted Mr. Crittenden, as to Mr. Stevens' whereabouts. And Mr. Stevens was Mr. Crittenden's intended target. There has been testimony and will likely be a little bit more testimony about the impetus of the transition from one group to the other. Detective Thorp, because of his relationship with kids who were, I'll say, rock crew adjacent associates, he was able to, because of his relationship with them, they willingly offered him information that he was able to then go and get to assist to help him solve that crime. So
What?
that's as specific as that inquiry gets.
Okay.
And so,
But yeah, given the hearsay and confrontation clause objections that have just been voiced,
yeah, I can, what I'll do with the court's permission, if it's okay, if it's an okay question by the court standards, is just ask,
No. No. Judge, just say no.
well, given that that was what I was going to pull out, whatever the court's ruling is.
well, it seems like the only way he would know that is through his investigation, and given that it was an investigation.
Stop helping
that
her.
would be testimonial and
And they're not, he's
Stop
not
helping
talking about
her.
what they said. He's just saying that they were able to. and
he's
it's not
going to
that-
be
it's not
saying,
a-
I learned XYZ. Well, how did you learn it? Well, somebody told me.
Right.
So it's still hearsay,
So I
even if
can-
you rephrase it in a different way.
Right. I can withdraw.
Okay.
I can.
All right.
Your Honor, I appreciate the fact that the state's withdrawing this line of inquiry. However, I would just like to say, moving forward, this is an example. This alleged crime, or I mean, it was adjudicated in court from 2011, I believe, is not on the indictment. There was no 404B notice. There was no 418 notice. There was no discussion of this as an intrinsic act. So, I just don't think that we should just be bringing up wholly unrelated murders just willy-nilly without at least noticing the other side of our plans to do so.
That seems reasonable.
Your Honor, as it relates to,
At
as it
wha-
relates to the information that
Miss Love, at one point, you just have to sit down and shut the fuck up.
I elicit from the witnesses, it's nothing that hasn't been, number one, it's not 404B because I'm not saying that any one of the defendants committed this act. In fact, it was alleged that Trontavia Stevens was the intended target. So in as much as the questions that I asked
Judge,
may
first of
involve
all,
incidents that YSL members were involved in, number one, it's going to be things that have been provided in discovery. But number two, just because it's another act or overt act, and I think that my brief to the court sort of addressed this, but it's relevant information and evidence of the existence and the nature of the enterprise that they claim is a rap group. So every time that we present evidence of something that proves the existence of the enterprise and the nature of the enterprise, there has been and will be the objection that it's 403, it's too prejudicial. But the point is that
it's still hearsay. You can't get around it. What brief? What are you talking? Let's try this. Evil Prosecutor Love.
Evil Prosecutor Love, can't tell no truth or loss. When the defense is right, she feels the chaos cross. With every counter word, her wrath begins to rise. A world of doom appears.
Okay, let's listen to this other version. Okay, in the style of rap. Okay, let's try. Let's see what appears. Evil Prosecutor Love, Hip Hop Dark Grit, and for its Daily Quick Bites. Above where you write in the song description, there is an option to make it instrumental. Okay, Evil Prosecutor Love, Hip Hop Dark Gritty.
Courtroom drama, heart frozen in the dark. Evil prosecutor love, justice she block. Defense drops a gem, a fury unlock. Wrath like a storm, thunder at the clock. She can't handle wrong. Truth's a heavy stone, twisting testimonies, words cut to the bone. Defense brings the heat, cracks the evil tone. She sees in silence, conscience overthrown. Word of doom, vengeance in her gaze. Vindictive plot against virtuous face. Defense shines light, she drowns in malaise. Evil prosecutor love, trapped in her maze.
All right, there we got it. Now we have some exit music. Once I will download this. This was a good one. Download. There. Download video. There. Let's get back to the trial.
The information that I'm soliciting from the witnesses are intended to prove up elements of count 1 in this indictment.
Your Honor, may I respond?
He's talking about a lack of any kind of notice.
But so he wants to know the questions, because I don't believe that a notice of my asking about questions regarding incidents that we've talked about. I don't believe that
We have
the
never
court, that the
spoken about
defense
this.
is entitled to the list of questions that the state is going to ask.
No, I agree with that. But
We've never spoken about this. There's no mention in the discovery, to my knowledge, certainly no police reports about the murder of, I guess, Julian Jones. I only know that because Detective Thorp said that name. No mention of the Javaris Crittenton case. There's no mention of that in the discovery, to my recollection. So
No,
I don't know where the state's saying that they've given notice through discovery. But even if they had given notice through discovery, there's also Georgia rules of evidence that dictate when notice needs to be given when bringing up extrinsic, non-charged matters in a trial, and that has not been done. And I just don't want, at this point, I think that we've cut this off, this particular incident, but I just don't want it to repeat in the future.
Your Honor, and that's another thing. These matters that are alleged by the defense as being extrinsic, uncharged matters, they're not. When we're asking about them, and just to cap off something Mr. Sharp said, we've had a witness already talk about the Crittenton murder earlier on, and Trontavious Stevens's involvement in it, just to put a point on that. But the assertion that these are extrinsic, uncharged matters are efforts, we believe, to curtail the state's right to prove its case through valid questions that are not improper. They are not impermissible. They're not 404B. These are questions and evidence through testimony, we believe, that proves an element of one or more elements of count one, the existence of the enterprise, the nature of the enterprise, and the means by which particular people participate in the enterprise.
Well, I'm not sure that evidence, I mean, it's not going to come in through this witness in this way anyway, but I'm not sure how evidence that Porter told Crittenden Stevens' whereabouts
No, so
in any way establishes any of your elements that you need to prove for RICO.
So, Your Honor, since we're not talking about this particular one, the point that I was making is that this detective's investigation involved two members of Rock Crew, and information he was able to obtain through other persons associated broadly. I'm not arguing or trying to get that in. I'm saying that there will be times when we are asking about matters that I have heard alleged are extrinsic, but they are not. And I guess it's on, if there's an objection, that's one thing, but the defense is in no way entitled to know every time we're going to ask about something that tends to prove what it
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. If you try to introduce new evidence, the defense needs knowledge about it beforehand. Seriously.
is that we are alleging in the indictment. And so to the extent that that's what is being asserted, we vehemently disagree with that. We are not and will not go further into that particular inquiry with Detective Thorp about that particular murder, but instances that involve actions and YSL members that witnesses have personal knowledge of are relevant to show the existence and nature of the enterprise and other material
I
elements.
guess we'll just have to see as the evidence plays out. All right, let's get the witness and the jury back in.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I mean, I could almost bet money she will try to do it again. This is unnerving. This is so stupid. Doug. Mr. Williams.
Thanks for y'all's patience. Go ahead, Miss Love.
Detective Thorp was
Yes, I know.
Was
Shady is in jail.
Investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas the most exposure or most extensive investigation you've done that throughout your investigation of Donovan Thomas, did you have an occasion to investigate more about the group YSL?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that the most extensive investigation that you have done that has involved or in which the name or group YSL has come up?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
What is when you went out to Vanira on January the 11th of 2015. Was Deshaun Quarterman the only one you talked to?
I recall, yes.
Did you speak with an Emmett Yarborough as well?
Yes.
All right.
Excuse me.
Without talking about anything that Emmett Yarborough said, were there concerns addressed regarding the Donovan Thomas murder?
I recall, I believe so.
When you collect shell casings did you direct, I'm sorry, when you are on scene as lead detective, do you or
All right. I heard that, well, you in chat reminded me that there at the moment is Rich Homie Kwan's celebration of life. And I can't do much, but about a week ago, I made this. So let's play this. All right. Let's get back to the trial.
or other homicide detectives working sort of in tandem with you, do you all direct the collection of those shell casings?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you do with them once you collect them?
Yes, ma'am. They're photographed and they're placarded, so we know exactly what shell casing belonged to what group. And at the time, our crime scene investigations unit, they collect the shell casings, and we at that time, we turn them in directly to the GBI, Firearms.
Now, do you all also have with the Atlanta Police Department, do you all also have a firearms section or a department that conducts NIBIN comparison?
Yes, ma'am, we do now.
Is Jennings Kilgore the person that does that?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you work during the investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas with ATF as well as the GBI?
Yes, ma'am.
Was some of the evidence that was collected in later associated incidents submitted to the ATF versus the GBI?
I believe so, they were. Yes, ma'am.
Did you collect the firearm, or did you interact with the person that you saw going into the barber shop with the assault rifle?
Yes.
Did you collect that firearm?
Yes, I did.
At various points in your investigation, did you gain information that caused you to interact with a Quintez Griffin?
Yes, ma'am.
And did that person have a nickname?
Yes, ma'am.
What was that nickname?
Head, H-E-A-D.
Now, how was Head ever brought in as a suspect?
Yes, he was.
And was he interviewed?
Yes, he was.
Did you collect any information, any evidence from that arrest of Quintez Griffin?
Yes.
And was that evidence submitted to the GBI or the ATF? Either one?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Throughout the month of January and into February, Were you personally aware of other incidents that you then looked into as connected with the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Not myself in particular, but I was getting information from the gangs unit.
All right. And when you were given information from the gangs unit, what, if anything, did you do to aid in your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas?
At that time, we did a collaboration. Anything that they needed done, like search warrants or anything pertaining to that nature, or oral production for inmate to do an interview with, I would conduct that for them.
And when you would do things like an order of production to produce an inmate, is there a record that you're taking someone out of custody to APD, for instance?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And did you keep records of each inmate that you did that with?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you talked about Spencer Wright, how did you learn about Spencer Wright?
Okay.
Let me phrase that better. Did Spencer Wright reach out to you, or did you reach out to Spencer Wright?
Neither.
Did he reach out to a member of the Atlanta Police Department?
Yes, he did.
And when he reached out to a member of the Atlanta Police Department, did that member of Atlanta Police Department reach out to you?
Yes,
Overruled.
yes, they did.
At the time that you spoke with Spencer Wright, was that the name that you thought was his name?
No, Spencer Wright was his real name.
Right.
Yes.
Was that the name that you were first advised
No,
when he
ma'am.
talked to you?
No,
Do
ma'am.
you remember the name?
I think it was Robinson, I believe it.
Nicholas Robinson?
Nicholas Robinson he used.
How did you learn, or from whom did you learn that his name was Spencer Wright?
Detective Gaither of the gangs unit.
All right. Between January of 2015 and October of 2015, when you interacted with Spencer Wright, were there any other steps that you took that you can describe for the jury to help you solve the murder of Donovan Thomas without going into anything anybody said, just the steps that you took?
Yes, I will work and correlate information along with the gang unit, possibly develop suspects based on their investigation.
Okay. Do you know how many incidents between January of 2015 and October of 2015 you looked into to aid in your investigation of the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
How many?
It was over 40.
Were all of these incidents the same type? What type of incidents were they?
Retaliation shootings.
Did you interview the people who were affected by the shootings? Did you have an occasion to interact with or interview any of the people who were affected?
No.
Did members of the Atlanta Police Department,
Yes, ma'am.
responding officers,
Yes, ma'am. In the gang unit.
and was it always Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither, or did, for instance, Investigator Connor, Investigator Price, and other people help you?
Sustained.
Was it always Detective Dennis and Detective Gaither?
Yes, ma'am.
Sustained.
Who in the gang unit gave you information during the course of your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas?
It was Detective Gaither, Detective Dennis, and Detective Underwood at times gave me information also.
So no actual witness, just relay the information through other incompetent and corrupt police officers.
Detective Underwood, did she work in any other capacity with any other agency?
I believe she worked hand in hand with the ATF.
Was she a task force officer?
I believe so. Yes, ma'am.
Did Detective Underwood ever participate in any of your interviews with persons that you found were of interest in your investigation?
Not that I can recall.
Did Detective Dennis and Gaither?
Yes, ma'am.
Were they the only persons who helped or participated in these interviews?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many interviews you conducted in trying to find out or solve the Donovan Thomas murder?
Objection to solve.
Objection to what?
To
Solve. Oh, okay. Sustained.
I asked,
To
did he,
help.
to,
Just
okay.
rephrase it.
Do you know how many interviews that you conducted to aid in your investigation into the Donovan Thomas murder?
Probably a little bit more over 12, a dozen or more.
Were these between January and October 2015, or did you do any after that date?
After that date.
All right. Now, at some point, do you try to locate or determine what vehicle that is that you saw, that grayish vehicle that you saw in the surveillance?
Yes, ma'am.
What steps do you take to identify that vehicle?
It was one based on a description given by one of the victims. I started sending around to other officers or detectives in the Atlanta Police Department who are very familiar with vehicles.
And without talking about what anyone says, unless I
Mhm.
specifically ask you.
Mhm.
Beyond,
Yeah, as you might see and have seen, he has notes with him, but where are the actual reports that backs his opinion up?
seeking information from other people, did you take any other steps to identify that vehicle?
No, ma'am, nothing about it.
Did you, at what point did you learn of a specific, did you ever learn of a specific make and model vehicle that you were interested in that investigation of Donovan Thomas's murder?
Yes, ma'am.
What was the specific make and model of the vehicle you were interested in?
I believe it was an Infinity Q35.
And do you know if the Infinity Q35 preceded any other model?
No, not to my knowledge.
Now, when you became interested in the Infinity Q35, did you do anything to determine who had or whose vehicle it may have been?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you able to tell the jury whether you got that information from a source, one particular source, or multiple sources?
Multiple sources.
How many times did you talk to Kenneth Copeland?
Maybe a total, maybe 4, I believe.
Did Kenneth Copeland provide you information that you were able to in any way use to get more information about the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he provide you information that you were able to confirm or deny was accurate?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you take steps to confirm or deny the accuracy of the information you were given by Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you ever given phone numbers by Kenneth Copeland?
I can't recall.
Were you ever given information regarding vehicle rentals by Kenneth Copeland?
Yes, ma'am.
Before 2016, did you go or make any efforts to try and locate information about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, what vehicle information did you get that you tried to follow up on before 2016?
That it was possibly a rental,
And a rental from where?
the airport.
And did you ever go out to the airport before 2016 to try and get information about it?
I believe I did.
Were you successful?
No, ma'am.
Now, after a certain point, do you,
How can you not be successful in getting information about a rental car when there are rental agreements? Did you just go out there without a warrant, maybe? Because it was jack crap evidence to back it up. So you didn't even get a warrant. And warrants are not that hard. He didn't. Well, if he ever went out there, I agree with Lucent Hill here, who believes he didn't go out there at all. And that's a strong possibility. And if he did, he probably went out there without a warrant trying to obtain the information. Because he knew he wouldn't get any.
you turn,
Squirrel
do
brain.
you keep your file with you and that's the end of it? Or do you turn it over to the district attorney's office at some point?
Turn it over to the district attorney's office upon their request.
When you turn the file over to the district attorney's office, does the investigation or do you stop working on the crime itself?
No, ma'am.
Do you work with any particular people to further investigate the crime?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any one particular person at the district attorney's office back in 2016 that you worked with to try and further investigate the murder?
Yes, ma'am. Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle.
All right. Do you know what his job was at the district attorney's office during that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Did he work primarily homicides?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you participate in any interviews with Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle back in 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Based on, were you able to get information from Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle that you didn't have before 2016?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you make any effort to follow up on that information?
I did, because I worked with him. He was doing the follow-ups and let me know.
Okay.
So I became his assistant.
All right. During 2015 and 2016, were you familiar with social media?
Yes, ma'am, somewhat.
When you say somewhat, did you ever utilize social media inquiries to help you in your investigations?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever gain assistance from others with social media to help you assist in your investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
And for the Donovan Thomas murder, do you recall who it was, if anyone, that gave you social media assistance?
I believe it was Detective Gaither and Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle.
And how is it that Detective Gaither assisted you with social media?
She would tell me about different media posts,
Okay.
what is being spread around on Instagram, media posts, social media, period, about this incident.
Wait a minute. Didn't we have a proffer, not a proffer, Miss Love arguing that it was the ADA Sprinkle who obtained this? But now he's saying, no, Gaither did it. I don't remember Gaither testifying about that.
Would she capture any of those posts and provide them to you?
Yes, ma'am. And she'll tell me that she's looking into this to verify.
Okay. What about Senior ADA Sprinkle? Did he look into social media information to help you in your investigation?
Yes, he did.
Did he provide you with social media accounts and posts that aided you in your investigation?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Going back to Mr. Wright, did you interview him once without Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you interview him again with Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What about Quindarius Zachary? Did you ever conduct any interviews with Quindarius Zachary, not getting into anything he said?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you know how many you conducted?
Maybe about 2 or 3.
Okay. Did you take any steps to compare information you got in one interview with information you may have gotten in another interview?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you in any way use those comparisons to sort of either dispel information as untrue or corroborate information?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you learn from anyone in particular who may have rented the vehicle that you were looking into, the Infiniti?
Yes, ma'am.
Calls for hearsay.
Your Honor, the evidence has come in, and if we may approach so that I don't speak more improperly.
It is sidebar counter 248. Yeah. Oh. And I sent a message to Doug about Detective Squirrel Brain saying Q35. The expert testified to a Q50. So that can be interesting. It wasn't a sidebar, it was a bench conference, whatever they call it. So it's not technically a sidebar. Let's see here. Are they coming back? Okay. This is a long sidebar. Yeah, Louis Thomas. Love called for a sidebar so she wouldn't look stupid arguing again. Yeah, Doug is amazing. Oh. Yeah, I wonder if they're going to talk about. I hope during cross-examination of Detective Squirrel Brain, they will ask about these two people. Of course, they are back. Okay. That was a long ass sidebar. Long ass sidebar. Oh, yeah. I'm going to lunch. Then I have some work I need to do. Now, if cross-examination starts before the end of day, I will return to live. Okay? Just so you know. So I will be, once lunch is starting, I will be sending you off to Catnot Williams. But I will be here until lunch.
Thorp, before you got the name Jeffrey Williams from Kenneth Copeland as being the person who rented an Infiniti from Hertz, did you know that Jeffrey Williams had rented an Infiniti from Hertz?
No, ma'am.
Were you present when?
I still say, I don't care what that expert said. Whatever is on that drive-by video is not an Infiniti. The grill doesn't match.
Are you aware of whether members of the district attorney's office, in conjunction with the Atlanta Police Department, went back out to Hertz in 2016?
Yes, ma'am, I'm aware.
Did you all talk to the same set of people? When you went in 2015, do you know if who you talked to was the same persons that they talked to in 2016?
I do not recall. I do not know if they were the same person.
And were you able to get more information in 2016 once you began working with the district attorney's office?
Yes, ma'am, a lot.
Did you use that information gained from Hertz to aid in your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, ma'am.
Without saying what was said to you, were you able to determine during your investigation if people went outside of Atlanta after the murder of Donovan Thomas?
I do not know about that part.
Did you get any phone records during your investigation into the murder of Donovan Thomas?
Yes, I did.
Did Detective Gaither aid you in getting some of those phone records?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you get phone records in investigations like this, would you tell the jury how it is that these records assist you in your investigation in trying to determine who murdered somebody?
Yes. We use the cell phone records to plot their course of travel. Also see if they was in the area where the incident took place based on the cell tower. Also, we try to see based on their call logs, who did they call before, during, and after the incident.
Do you remember
Did they call each other
all
like they
of the
do
phone
every
records
day?
that you gained or gathered through this investigation from 2015 through 2016, either alone or with other members of the Atlanta Police Department or the DA's office?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you tell the jury, without getting into the
Right
details
straight in the
about
house.
the phone records themselves, some of the persons whose phone numbers you sought and were able to obtain?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, who are some of the people whose phone numbers you got during this investigation?
I believe it was Kenneth Copeland, Demikian Garlington. Can't recall the other person's real name. Knew him as Montonk, I believe it was.
Antonio Sledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh. Who else? Who else's phone numbers do you recall getting throughout this investigation?
I believe that's the ones that I targeted on.
Were other numbers provided to you by members of the DA's office or members of the gang?
Yes, ma'am.
when you met with the people that you interviewed, did you show them the surveillance footage and attempt to get information about this footage from the people you interviewed?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I did not personally, because I didn't want it to affect how they described the incident to me.
Amelia Dixon, good question. Why didn't we hear about this red cartel earlier in the trial? Yeah, I have no idea. At this point in time, it sounds made up. It sounds completely made up. So I have no idea. I have no clue.
Okay. Now, how is it that you reach a point where you turn the case over to the DA's office? For you generally, at what point are you saying, okay, here, DA's office, take the case?
Usually have a conversation with the DA's office, a meeting. At that time, that ADA or senior ADA made a determination to transfer the file to me, your full investigation completed, and we'll take a look at it and move forward from there. And we need your assistance, we'll give you a call.
Okay.
Follow up on investigations.
Is your completion of the file followed up by a determination or an indictment or a dismissal or something like that?
Yes, ma'am.
And who makes that decision ultimately, whether to present it or to dismiss it, as it relates to people that you've turned over to the DA's office?
The ADA's office.
And does the district attorney's office always agree with the determinations that you've made in your investigation?
No, ma'am.
And do they ever ask you after you've turned over a file to? The question was going to be, has he ever been asked to get more information after they get a file from him? I don't know how that's hearsay is a request, so it's not hearsay. And does he act on that?
Why don't you just ask the second question?
Okay.
Sustained.
Yes, Your Honor. Do you ever act on Do you ever act on requests from the DA's office for additional information even after you've turned the file over to them?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you act on that, do you turn over to the DA's office whatever information you get that they've asked for?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you save it in a report, or is that also missing?
In the Donovan Thomas murder, do you know whether the shell casings from those scenes you described were compared to see if there were any NIBIN matches?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that done at your request, the gang units, or someone else's?
My request.
Did the information that you gained from every person that you interviewed always turn out as true?
Yes, ma'am.
Every person that you talked to told you the truth?
Objection asked and answered.
I'm gonna overrule. I'm gonna let her clarify.
Did the information you get from the people, everybody you interviewed, did it always pan out? Did you always find that it was true, or did you sometimes disprove or discredit the information?
Yes, ma'am. Sometimes we proved and disproved what they were saying.
Okay.
Oh, that was so leading. That was not a hard question to answer. And apparently he forgot that they couldn't verify anything. That was so
And if you
leading.
were able to discredit or disprove information, did that help you in your investigation as well?
Yes, ma'am.
In what way?
We know if we hit in a wall or we found a good door to go through to further investigation, find more information.
Okay. Do you particularly in your homicide investigations ever attempt to listen to jail recordings to get more information about your homicide?
Yes, ma'am.
And did the DA's office get you information about jail recordings that aided in your homicide?
Yes, ma'am.
Was that Senior ADA Mike Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you also work with David White?
Yes, ma'am.
And was that ADA Sprinkle's investigator?
Yes, he was.
Was Mr. White able to get you even further information that helped in your investigation?
If I recall correctly, yes, ma'am, he did.
Do you know where, did you ever determine where the vehicle that you were interested in from Hertz ended up?
No, ma'am, I was able to determine what happened to it.
Do you know if
Excuse me.
ADA Sprinkle and Investigator White investigated that further?
Yes,
Objection,
ma'am.
Your Honor, calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
He's leading on with hearsay.
Without saying what information?
She is more or less prepping the witness during her questioning by asking leading questions that cause for speculation, just so she can tell him, be prepared because I'm going to ask you something and this is how you should answer it.
Did you get any more information about where that vehicle ended up from either Investigator White or ADA Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
I call bullcrap.
When you got phone numbers to look into, were some of those numbers given to you during the interviews of the persons who, for instance, if you're interviewing me, I offer you my number. Does that happen sometimes?
Yes, ma'am.
Did that happen sometimes in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Vague.
Where was Spencer Wright located when you first went to talk to him?
He was involved in an incident and he was transported to the homicide office. I can't recall what street he was on.
Had he been arrested?
Yes, ma'am.
And was he trying to offer up information to sort of get some kind of help with his case?
Not to my recollection, no, ma'am.
When you get information, do you ever get information from people who've been arrested that want sort of quid pro quo?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do you discard that information, or do you try to follow up on it, or something different?
I try to follow up on it.
Why do you follow up on information when they're offering it in exchange for help?
Because that's part of the investigation process. You got to figure out if they're telling the truth. Information they deeming is correct and can help you with further your investigation.
Ms. Love is desperately trying to extend this direct examination. I don't know why, because it's whatever she's trying to get to is worthless because she was struck down on the very thing she wanted in. That completely unrelated homicide. and that was struck down. So now she's just grabbing for straws.
Were you able to get information about persons you did not previously find of interest after you began working with ADA Sprinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, when you get to the point where you turn over a case to the district attorney's office, do you have to make arrests? I mean, have you at that point made arrests or taken out warrants?
Overall of this particular case.
In general, do you turn over the case before or after you've taken out warrants?
It depends on the investigation. Sometimes before, sometimes after. A whole lot of times more after the arrest is made.
And what is it that decides whether you're going to turn it over before you decide who to arrest versus after?
Depending on the investigation, like I said, we have a discussion, a meeting with the senior ADA, and let them know exactly what's going on with the investigation. This is what I've determined as a possible probable cause. 9 times out of 10, sometimes they see it your way, sometimes they don't.
And if you've made an arrest, do you have to go into court and testify after, not before trial, but before a judge to make any determination about whether or not?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Sustained.
This is just filibustering now at this point. This is so stupid.
Were some of the people that ultimately you believe, Your Honor, I need to approach because there's a question that I don't, this is
All
going
right.
to.
She didn't want to be objected to and laughed at. Oh. Lunch
All right,
break.
so we're going to take our lunch break now. Yeah, let's be back at 1. Can we be back at 1:30? Can y'all be back?
All
at
right,
1:30?
let's
I can
see
give you all enough
if
time. Let's do that.
something happens if they are doing it publicly.
Heck, if you can step out and we'll see.
Oh, we are going to listen to it. Yay, no freaking bench.
The question that I was
Garbage.
going to ask was regarding some of the people that he arrested that ultimately did not end up on the indictment. And I'm going to follow whatever direction the court gives, but I think that Mr. Sledge was a person that he arrested that probable cause was not found for, and the state did not include as one of the persons, Mr. Sledge, and I think Mr. Copeland. I think that that's going to come out. And that we not only did we not proceed.
This is up to the defense, but I mean, I think it would speak for the defense that this absolute moron of an investigator started arresting people for no apparent reason. That could be good for the defense, but I'm not on the defense team, so I don't know.
On that, but probable cause was not found for Mr. Sledge. So I don't, that was what I was
Not
on.
an appropriate question.
Okay.
Anything else before we break for lunch? Nothing.
And Your Honor, just to get clarity, the court does, the appropriateness comes with the probable cause and the preliminary hearing, not with whether or not he took out warrants for them, right?
Right.
Okay.
Your Honor, to be exact, the state began to ask the question. They said, are there any defendants or whatever the noun was that you believed that's inappropriate?
Well, that's irrelevant.
And if they want to be precise, they need to say that you took warrants out for, not you believed.
Judge, what this witness did and why he did it is relevant. I don't think that, you know, one side can tell the other the appropriate way to ask the question. I don't think it's an inappropriate question
whether you had a difference of opinion regarding who,
And you were allowed to ask that.
yes, the
But-
court, yeah.
But his personal belief is not relevant.
Okay, then, did you take out warrants for people we didn't indict? I mean, and I was gonna ask specifically about Mr. Copeland and Mr. Sledge.
Okay, but you can't ask the other issues.
Okay.
All right. See everybody at 1:30.
All right, folks. Breaking for lunch. And yeah, I have to do stuff. But if this goes to cross-examination, I will be back live. So, folks, thank you for listening to me up until lunch, to my rants, to my cursing, and to my everything. Thank you for allowing me to try to translate what is going on. And what's going on here can be summarized with this channel's motto. You can't un-F a cluster F. And this, by the way, mug is in my merch shop if you want one of your own. So I'll be sending you all over to Catnot Williams. And if they go to cross-examination, I will be live again. But until then, thank you. Thank you, thank you. And hug your family. Unless your family is crap, then screw them and give your love to the people who deserve it. And now again, evil Prosecutor Love.
Courtroom drama, heart frozen in the dark. Evil prosecutor love, justice she block. Defense drops a gem, a fury unlock. Wrath like a storm, thunder at the clock. She can't handle wrong, shoots a heavy stone. Twisting testimonies, words cut to the bone. Defense brings the heat, cracks the evil tone. She sees in silence, conscience overthrown. Word of doom, vengeance in her gaze. Vindictive plot against virtuous face. Defense shines light, she drowns in malaise. Evil prosecutor love, trapped in her maze.